Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Country Education Partnership Professional Development Series. Today I'm delivering from Wadawurrung Country on behalf of the CEP. We acknowledge First Nations people as the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which our schools, our families and our communities work and play. I pay our respects to elders of the past, the present and those that will lead their collective future. Welcome everybody to the third in this series, winter series of professional development. Our focus today is on clustering. We will be talking about the different types of clusters and their value, and this is the second occasion in which we focused on clustering because of the particular interest for rural schools, particularly those small schools that are in isolated settings, and there are great advantages associated with clustering. At present, unfortunately, the Chief Executive Officer, Mark McClay, is not online at the moment due to some connection difficulties, but I'm sure he'll be online during the course of today's activities. The housekeeping arrangements similar to the past. If you have a question, please include your question in the chat section. We'll keep an eye on the chat section and answer your questions if we can today. And if we can't answer it today, we will follow up during the coming week and get back to you. The session is being recorded, and we've noted that quite a few people are going back and having a look at the session at a more convenient time. So even though in some cases the numbers have only been small when we've been delivering, we've found that there's been quite an extensive number of people going to the website and looking at the recording. The session will definitely be 1 hour, be concluded by 5 o'clock. And a reminder to everybody that there is a survey at the end of the session, and please just take a minute or so or two to complete that survey before you sign off today. Now, I've noticed that Mark McClay, our Chief Executive, is now online. Mark, did you want to make a couple of comments?
Thanks, Brendan. Yeah, just want to welcome everyone along who's watching it live and the recording. Country Education Partnership are a non-for-profit organisation that we support and advocate for rural communities and schools across Victoria. And the PD Online series is a result of the conversations we've had with rural schools and very much needs-based. We have one more session in our winter series, and plans are already underway for our spring series, loosely titled Connecting Communities, and we are very open to any input regarding speakers or content for that series. Please get in touch if it's something you would like to be involved with. Thank you. That's all for me, Brendan.
Thanks, Mark, and happy birthday for yesterday, Mark. 41 yesterday, were you?
A pair of fives.
Very good, very good. Now, I'll hand over to Morris Billy, who will introduce our speakers and facilitate today's session. So over to you, Morris.
Thanks, Brendan, and welcome everybody. And it's great to be back again. It's a really diverse group of people we've got this afternoon, so I'm really looking forward to hearing from our guest speakers. A little later on, we'll be hearing from Henry from RESN, which I'm really excited that Henry's able to join us before he heads off overseas for a well-earned break. I'll do a bit more of an intro for him in a little while, but our focus today at the beginning is on clusters, and I'm actually going to introduce the man who organises all our cluster work with CEP, and that's Shane Mathison. So Shane, I might hand over to you, and you can introduce our special guest this afternoon.
Thank you, Morris. So I appreciate the opportunity to have a chat to everyone about the work that CEP does in the cluster space. If I can just take a minute, I will present my screen and take you through my presentation. Sorry about that. Hopefully that has come up for everybody. Can I get a thumbs up from someone to say that you can see my screen? Beautiful, we're away. Okay, as Morris said, my name's Shane. I look after the cluster support program for CEP. And today I just want to sort of take everybody through a little bit of background on how CEP approaches their cluster work, but then also to share with everybody a little bit about how we can support schools and clusters moving forward. So a little bit of background on how we work. We sort of started by sitting down looking through the key characteristics of what we see as a successful, sustainable cluster. And you can see those up on the screen, but I just want to take people through a couple of those and highlight a few things that we feel are really important in cluster work. One of those is the structures and processes section there. So that's where we look to support by creating a cluster development plan with the cluster. I suppose similar in representation to like an MOU or a terms of reference document, that sort of thing. But in a nutshell, what we're looking to do is for a cluster to have an agreed approach on how they will work together. We find that this is really, really important to ensure the success of the cluster. What it does is it allows the cluster to be able to create a vision, understand their direction and pathway, what are the key areas that they want to focus on, those type of things which allow them to ensure that the work is focused in the approach that they take. That's a really important thing so that people are able to come to the meetings, be a part of the cluster and understand that these are the key areas and have a say in what they are. Doesn't mean that over time you can't be flexible and change those things, but if things are starting to move away from the core business of what the cluster wanted to achieve, then we've got this agreement. We know that things can change, different educational initiatives can come out, staff can change, but if we've got a development plan that we have underpinning our work, then we've got something to fall back on and use as our I suppose agreed approach. So that's one area. The other area there is collaborative autonomy that I wanted to chat about a little bit. The pure nature of clusters means that we are collaborating and connecting, and that's the positive thing. But CEP really feels it's important to ensure that we maintain some autonomy as a school. Schools know their context well, they know the issues that they're facing, they know what direction they're heading in. And so if a cluster is looking to run through a specific initiative, it's really important that member schools of the cluster have the ability to say, nah, actually at the moment that's not for us. It's not meeting our needs. We don't have the time or the resources or something like that. It's not fitting the direction that we're in, and be able to step out of that space. Whereas, it might be a cluster of 5 or 6, might have 2 or 3 go off and do something, have some success, bring it back to the cluster and talk about it, that sort of thing. And what that allows is it ensures that people are getting what they need out of the cluster. When we talk about a sustainable cluster, we want it to be able to keep going into the future. And if schools are coming into a cluster situation and feel like they're being sort of forced into a space, that's not what they want to get. They'll often move away and shift out of the cluster or sort of avoid it if they're not getting their needs met as well. So I think it's important to have that flexibility within a cluster setting. So that's just a few of the things that we see in successful and sustainable clusters. CEP also sat down and went through and looked at the areas of work that clusters do, and we sort of look at 3 different areas of work that clusters can do, and basically one of those is have a student focus, and schools do this extremely well. These are those sort of extracurricular things. It might be sports and camps, might be guest speakers, those type of things that have a focus on students connecting, building relationships with kids from other schools, and having opportunities to participate in activities. It might be schools sharing resources. A school might have a set of STEM robotics or something like that that other schools don't have, and it's being able to share that and then open up those opportunities for all students. So it's got a real strong student focus. And although the direct result of that is a positive outcome for students, there's a lot of other positives that come out of that level of work. Your school communities are going to see that you are working with other schools, and that's a really positive thing, that their schooling goes beyond the gates of their own school. And informally, it'll also bring your staff together and have opportunities to connect and interrelate. So we see that as a really, really important space. Another area is targeted initiatives, and that's where we start to look at small groups of staff coming together for specific tasks. It might be around your workforce, so it might be something like your Prep 1-2 teachers coming together to collaborate on some curriculum development or do some moderation or those type of things. And build the skills and knowledge and work of the staff. And again, that provides far beyond the actual work that they're doing. All of a sudden, we're stepping the teachers out of their own school environment. They're seeing other ways of doing things, meeting with other teachers, building those professional relationships, having those professional dialogues around those key aspects, but a range of things. But just as importantly as anything, it builds a support network. And a lot of the clusters that we work with at the moment, this is the key. This is the area that they really want to be connected to. They want to be have people that they can talk to, share concerns, troubleshoot, and build that type of support network around them. And so clusters are really good for that. So there are some key elements that we would do within clusters, but sometimes it's that extra level of support that's just a really positive outcome. So then another level of work is then when we talk about the whole cluster. We have clusters that share strategic plans or specific goals within a strategic plan, perhaps looking at running out an educational initiative across the whole cluster. Disability inclusion is sort of a new one for a lot of schools, and you know, being able to share knowledge, share the resources, and build an approach to working in that space is really important. We have a cluster that are looking to run a professional learning day together. So coordinating the day as one whole group, and then they're going to actually deliver the sessions with the expertise on their staff and really build that strong, close connection of learning throughout the whole cluster. So that's a little bit of background, I suppose, on the way CEP sees cluster work and how we work in that space. And now I'd like to share for a few minutes I suppose the ways that we can support and help schools and clusters moving forward. So at a really simple level, we can come and just attend cluster meetings. If you're an established cluster, we can come in and just attend the meetings. And we feel that this can really be beneficial to both the cluster, but also to CEP. By me coming to a cluster meeting, I get to have a finger on the pulse of things that are happening in cluster spaces, what some of the concerns are within schools, what are the initiatives that are being put in place, all of that type of thing. And that really helps me when I work with other clusters. But what I like to feel is that there will be times when we can contribute and support with guidance or resourcing for the things that are coming up in their meetings. So we feel that's a really good two-way thing. It can be a really simple space, but certainly a good step in connecting with CEP and clusters. Advocacy is a huge part of CEP's work across the board, but we think that really applies in the cluster setting as well. There are a lot of things that will pop up in cluster meetings, and sometimes if we see that there's a significant concern that's occurring that's causing an impact through schools in the cluster, we can then try and advocate for the cluster to look at supports and avenues for help, and that's something that we're really keen to do, and feel that's a strong part of us advocating for rural schools. So we're also, and we're running through this process with some new schools at the moment, but supporting new cluster schools to develop and build their system. We can provide advice, connect them to other clusters that are perhaps already operating at a more advanced level, and they can sort of see that and then get advice and support from us. I mentioned before the cluster development plan. I think this is really important and something that we're happy to help facilitate. We don't, talk to the cluster about what they need to include in that, but we provide guidance and open up the opportunity and run through the process and can certainly support that. There's a cluster that I was just going to the meetings and that sort of thing, and through the work there, they've asked me to do a cluster development plan, and we're flexible at CEP and being able to move and work in the spaces that a school or a cluster needs, and so that's certainly an example of that process there. About the levels of work before, we really feel schools do an awesome job at level 1 of connecting their students, particularly those in the smaller environments, and connecting them through lots of activities. And we like to feel that then we can support maybe at the level 2 and 3 cluster initiatives to try and support that. We know it's difficult and challenging for clusters to find time sometimes to build these things, and if there's any way that we can help, we certainly like to do that. So again, that's another avenue that we can support and help. Troubleshooting might be if there's things that are of concern, we might be able to, and I suppose this goes back to the advocacy, is we might be able to support that by finding supports outside of the cluster to overcome an issue, or just work with the cluster on any issues that they might be going through. And then there's the ability to do some intensive 12-month support, which is where we work really closely with the cluster, and it might go across a range of the different points that I've already talked about, depending on the needs of the cluster or what direction they want to go. But we can sort of get in there and really work hard on supporting them to implement a range of initiatives, develop a cluster plan, be attending, whatever the needs of that cluster might be. So that's a range of the ways that CEP can help. We certainly are ready and willing to help, and that kind of finishes my little section. So thank you for taking the time to listen. On the screen there, you can see my email address and phone number. I'm happy to talk to people about clusters at any point in time, so feel free to reach out, or you can just go via our website to reach me as well if you need to. So thank you. I might now throw back Morris. I'll stop my sharing and throw back to you.
Thanks, Shane. Very thorough expose of the work in the cluster area. And I think our first speaker is ready for us now in the same vein. And we've got Robert Walsh joining us. So Robert, welcome, and over to you.
Thanks. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you my experiences as a member and a chair last year of the Arch Cluster. The benefits of being in this cluster from my point of view, and why I value attending them. So I'll just outline a bit about the Arch Cluster, what we've done, and the benefits and the value that I see from them. So the Arch Clusters sort of started maybe 20 or more years ago in Ballarat, near the Arch of Victory, so Ballarat High School. So pretty Ballarat centric, and Ballarat High School being a feeder school, Alfredton Primary School where I was at being a feeder school to Ballarat High School, and a few schools around that area. Then it's evolved over time. Now, it's not as formal as some of the clusters that Shane was talking about, so it ranges from informal to fairly formal. We meet, it's just 4 meetings a year, and it's principal based, so it's principals who attend. And I guess it's different to this cluster is different to a COP. community of practice, which has been a bit of a key initiative and a push, and this being different to that. So my roles, I was a leading teacher at Alfredton Primary School, so being a larger school in Ballarat, but then I moved out as principal to Hepburn Primary School and currently Mount Blowhard, so more rural areas. And I have stayed in this cluster because of the value that I got from it and not having access to other clusters. So the arts cluster, it's fairly diverse, which is really good because you get a variety of expertise and a variety of views that the group brings. So we have approximately 12 schools. As I said, quite a few in Ballarat, but some rural. We've got secondary schools, primary schools, a large secondary college, a large special school, multi-campus primary school, primary schools varying in size from 70, 80, 100, 250, 350 and 580 students, varying demographics. And then we have other partnerships that attend our meetings sometimes, such as CEP. So we have, a diverse range of leaders. So the benefits for me is I learn a lot at these meetings from the reality of when an initiative is brought out, what it looks like at the level of the school. So when things come from, and this is not an us versus them, but when things are brought out or initiatives, I learn a lot from the people in the cluster about, well, what's the reality of that and how we're going to implement it. So I went back from, as I was a chair last year, I went back through the minutes and that I took in the agenda items just to give you an idea of lots of things that we really shared. And whilst it's only 4 meetings, what happens is people develop documents, have questions after the meetings, and they share them over email. So I would learn a lot about the reality from more experienced principals and then the struggles that we were all going through for certain issues. So obviously the last few years there's been a lot around COVID, so there's a lot around that and staff wellbeing. But last year we spent a lot of work on time in lieu. And what does that look like? And questions and documents and many questions and sharing of documents, of making time in lieu documents for schools. Disability inclusion took a lot of our time last year. Spot, mental health fund, aims, out of our school care grants, the new agreement, and going back before COVID, PDP processes, observational models, recruitment and staffing issues, things that schools do for wellbeing for not only their staff but their students. So a lot of work was done in those areas. So yes, as I said, at the start, as a relatively new principal, I learned a lot and valued the meetings, and we shared a lot, and sometimes halved our work and our issues. Sometimes it was, these meetings are just nice to hear that people have the same issues as you. That probably brings me to the next part of what I take from this cluster, and I know others do. So you also take the wellbeing part. So the principal wellbeing, not just connecting with other principals and being with them. And you'll often have 1 or 2, like today, left after the official meeting's finished, just talking through things that have happened. Now, when I was at a previous school, I didn't see anyone. No one came through my door apart from the parents of the school and my staff. So whilst it's not a COP, which was the preferred model for a while, and maybe clusters and networks were pushed to the side, they're extremely important depending on their focus. Principal wellbeing, it's that these clusters have certainly supported a lot of principals in that area, informally or formally, and forming contacts and connections. So I don't know, Shane and Mark, who have been to the arts cluster a few times, you might want to add or clarify or agree, not agree. That's how I sort of see them. That's how I see the arts cluster from my point of view. So that's my experience there.
Certainly, I'm new to the cluster, but immediately in the meetings that I've been attending, I've seen that straight away, that there is first and foremost that connection between the principals as a support network, and it's just what I would call a safe space to sit and be and share and talk about things. And I actually walk away feeling really good about what you're doing there and achieving in that space. So well done. I think it's a great space, and without saying it, I think people need a space like that where they can share and have people that understand what they're going through. So, yeah, well done.
And Mark, who has been as principal part of the Arts Cluster and obviously CEP as well. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Mark.
Yeah, Robert, the other great thing about the cluster is at times you've been able to bring in someone from the department to come speak to the group as a cluster, which perhaps an individual principal or two wouldn't be able to arrange, or less likely. So that is that power of the collective. But I probably just really enjoyed the honesty. People would bring what was on their plate and concerning them without fear of judgment. It was a really safe space to be in, and the role can be quite lonely, we know, at times. And the thing I found fascinating, Robert, there was a period when it dropped off and numbers got quite low. And then I think through time and Lou and a couple of other things, I went to a meeting where it was full. I think everyone was represented.
Yep.
And the learning you get from having a specialist school involved, having a secondary school, a large secondary school, just lets you stop and think from someone else's perspective just for a moment. And I always found that really valuable. So, yes. No, happy with that. Thanks, Robert.
Yep. No worries. Thank you.
So just staying on that frame, just to follow on from Shane, probably two key overall things we look for with clusters are very much that Stephen Covey model of 1 + 1 = 3, that by working with another school, you won't actually be in a better position than where you would be if you were working individually. And the other thing is that looking forward is to say, if our cluster was really effective, what would it look like at the end of 23 or end of 24, and to work back from there, that beginning with the end in mind. I think those two things are really important. We do have online another principal of a small school who has been part of effective clusters in the past. We've got Lee and Damien, but Damien, who I've teed up all of 3.5 minutes ago. Anything you'd like to add?
Just the value of the cluster. And so we were humming along, we had an MOI, and we're moving into the next stage of being each other's like conscience, or I can't remember the words, I need a holiday, but and then COVID hit, and so we've started again, but we've just started the group part of it, where we're mixing with kids and seeing the value of that again with camps and sporting events. And from those kid-focused activities, the staff are realising that they are missing the connection that we got from the cluster and the learning. So we've had Shane come down and talk with us. So hopefully we'll get back to a level that we were and work with each other. But during COVID, we were just invaluable with each other. It was just, we had someone to talk to and always fall back on. So it was great.
Thanks, Damien. I'll stop taking over and pass back to Morris.
Thanks very much for that. And it was a very thorough look at the work of clusters and the amazing work that gets done. So thanks everyone for sharing, and Shane in particular for the introduction and giving us a background there about the cluster work that CEP is currently doing. Next up, we're going to move on and now hear a bit about our RESN, and this is really exciting to have Henry with us today. For those of you who don't know, we've had a bit to do with Henry recently with our Rural Youth Ambassadors program, which has kicked off in Victoria. And Henry presented to our youth ambassadors a couple of months ago when they were all together in Melbourne. And it's fair to say the response from all our young people was overwhelmingly positive, and they were thrilled to be able to hear from Henry and work with Henry, and also sign up for what RESN actually has to offer. So we're really excited, and the young people are certainly really excited to see what RESN which is the regional education support network, has to offer. Just briefly, it does offer rural and regional students free educational support. And I think some of those things include tutoring, mentoring, resources, and a whole range of other stuff. Henry, you might correct me, but I think you're currently providing support in Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria, and I think around 200 schools across Victoria and New South Wales have been using the service recently. So it's really exciting to have Henry with us before he jets off to Europe for a well-earned break. So Henry, without further ado, I'll bring you in, and you can give us the RESN spiel. Thank you.
Thanks, Maurice. Really happy to be here. And a little bit about me, before I share my slides. I'm 22. I'm a uni student in Canberra, and I am the current Chief Operating Officer, CEO to be in July of RESN. We're a fully volunteer, not-for-profit organisation. And yeah, as Maurice said, I'm here today to tell you a little bit about what we do and how it might be useful to regional youth who you may know. So just give me 1 sec to share my screen and I'll get my slides underway. Is that visible to everyone? Great.
Good.
Cool. So equity, performance, aspiration. These are three pillars that inform what we do at RESN. And you'll see there the subtitle is our vision. It's an Australia in which geography doesn't dictate access to high quality education support. So what does that mean in practice? You don't need me to tell you the struggles that regional students face as a class. What I am going to tell you about is one of our students, a girl named Nicola from regional New South Wales. She was from Port Macquarie up on the New South Wales mid-north coast. And throughout her time at schooling, because she was regional, Nicola didn't have access to the high quality resources and educational support that kids in the city have. She didn't get one-on-one feedback, mentoring, support from her teachers because her teachers didn't have time to do that. And as a result, statistically, Nicola and her peers' learning was up to 2 years behind that of the kids in the city. And in conversations with Nicola, she wasn't even sure that going to university was an option for her. And look, as you would all well know, there are tens of thousands of students across Australia who share Nicola's story. Metro students are almost twice as likely to complete high school as regional students are, and only 20% of tertiary students are from regional areas. And that is not commensurate with the percentage of high school students who are from regional areas. This is where RESN comes in. We, as I said, envision an Australia in which geography does not dictate access to high quality education support. And we're working to solve what we see as a really simple problem that forms part of the barrier to regional kids' success. You've got the regional students out in regional, rural, and remote areas who need assistance, who aren't getting assistance at school, who don't have access to tutors or who can't afford tutoring or both. And you have university students in the city who are really willing to help. They've got free time on their hands. They're keen to do a bit to give back in their spare time and help out people who are pretty much their age, but they've got no way to connect. There's no way for a regional student who needs a tutor and a university student who would be willing to tutor to come together. And that's where RESN comes in. We solve the problem that I just described with a unique custom-built web app, a team of very passionate volunteers, and a whole lot of heart. You'll see yours truly over there on the right in Namurka a little while ago. And as Maurice said, we've served several hundred schools across New South Wales and Victoria. We desperately need to update our website because we had a crack in Queensland, and I think a bunch of Victorians and Canberrans didn't quite realize how big Queensland is until we'd had a crack at it. And so we've pulled back from Queensland from the time being, and we're seeking enough funding that will let us actually move back into Queensland, SA, etc. But Victoria and New South Wales are the service areas for now. So what do? I mentioned that we've got a unique model in our web app. It's on demand for students. It's scalable based on the number of tutors and students we have. And most importantly, as Maurice said, it's completely free. So our main service that I'll tell you a little bit more about in a second is called RESN Help. And in essence, a student asks any question they want about a subject at any time of day, and an answer will come back to them, custom written for them within 24 hours. So we've done 10,000 of those question and answers in 5 years, and we're looking forward to doing many thousands more in the near future. That's an example of what our portal looks like. It's designed to be really accessible and easy to use for our students. And, you know, we're working as much as we can to incorporate some more gamified elements into it to help with our user retention, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's kind of for anyone who's a digital native who knows how to use Facebook or any other app, they can get learning with RESN in less than 5 minutes. So what are our services? We've got 3 services. The first is the one that I just described, RESN Help, which is on-demand question and answer. So for example, a student who has an essay that they'd like some extra feedback on can send it into RESN, and it'll come back with comments, feedback, and suggestions within 24 hours. Same thing for a maths question they can't solve, or a science response that they're having a bit of difficulty with. Any subject that we have tutors for, we offer for students to send in questions and get answers back. The next one is RESN Learn, and that is study resources and online quizzes that are designed around the New South Wales and Victorian syllabuses. So the study resources, it's sort of, in the same way that I get notes for my law courses from older mates at uni, the RESN Learn study resources are designed to be a student's one-stop shop for really digestible, focused condensations of what they need to know for an exam and how they should go about putting that knowledge on paper in a way that will get them the marks they need. Similarly, our quizzes are modeled after past VCE and HSC questions. And so, for example, say a student is studying VCE biology and they think, oh, I'm feeling a bit rusty on syllabus point A, B, D, and F. They go on to RESN quizzes and they put in VCE biology, syllabus points A, B, D, F, and our system spits out a quiz for them based on those syllabus points, modeled on VCE and HSC questions that they can take and then look at model answers for to test their understanding. A really important part of that is we recognize that even having access to past papers is a metropolitan privilege in a lot of situations. You've got the networks of independent schools in the city who share their trial papers, or schools that can afford to buy access to trial paper databases. And that's just not a reality for many regional, rural, and remote students. And so we're looking to close that gap. Finally, we've got RESN Interact. That's probably what you think of when you think of free tutoring. It's small group tuition done over Zoom at the end of every term, designed to help students consolidate their understanding of the content that they've learned that term and bounce things back and forth with a tutor. You can sort of imagine it like a uni tutorial, in that they're not sitting in a lesson so much as they're going to a bit of a workshop with the tutor to work through a lesson that the tutor has planned, ask questions of the tutor, kind of workshop model answers, basically have access to what you'd have access to if your parents paid for a private tutor and you hopped on Zoom with that tutor. The question that may be on a lot of your lips is, who are these tutors who are providing these services? Why should I tell some kid that I know that they should go sign up to a service and I have no idea who's providing it? And that's a great question, if I don't say so myself. Our tutors are all volunteer uni students who received top marks in the subjects they tutor in. So in Victoria, that's a VCE study score of 40 plus. In New South Wales, that's a band 6. They all have working with children's checks. They all do child safety training, and we're working on implementing some more structured like lesson planning and teaching training as well with some of our uni partners. But yeah, these are all really passionate volunteers who would be doing the exact same thing for a lot of money with city kids, and basically they just want to give back and help out regional, rural, and remote kids who can't get access to it themselves. So, you know, for example, I tutor when I can for RESN. I got a perfect ATAR at school. I ranked in subjects in the New South Wales HSC. I'm not telling you that because I'm a wanker who wants to talk about his ATAR, but you know, I was getting offered $200, $300 an hour by city tutoring firms to tutor kids who already went to private schools, who already had tutoring for every other subject. And I thought, why the hell would I want to do that? You know, I'm not doing anything to change anything about the underlying inequality that's going on in Australia. And so me and hundreds of other kids like me have decided to sign up and tutor with RESN instead. The gaps we try to fill can kind of be described in 3 ways. We've got content. So like I was saying, you need the content. You need to understand what it is that the examiner is looking for in a response and how to get it down on the page. More than that, you need feedback. You need to be told, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? How can I improve? What should I be looking for, etc. And finally, these students need support. They're not able to just go it alone. And you know, they've got their family support structures, their school support structures, but you know, we've seen time and time again that kids at this really pivotal and often fragile point of their life benefit from as much support as they can possibly get. And so having these uni student mentors available for them on the RESN portal, we've found makes a huge difference for regional students in being, you know, feeling supported and feeling confident in their ability to get to where they want to go. I mentioned earlier the value that we look to create for students. We're looking to create greater equity, meaning that a kid at a school in inner city Sydney has the same access as a kid at Numurkah High School, helping to improve students' performance, because aspiration for higher education frankly means diddly squat if you can't get there. And as I was explaining to someone the other day who works at a university, for a lot of people, aspiration can, you know, honestly be cruel if you're not supporting them to get there. Because students who are, a kid I met in Lake Macquarie who wanted to be an astrophysicist, who doesn't even have a physics teacher at his school, and his principal told me, yeah, look, Jared's probably not going to get into any astrophysics programs because we just can't support him. You need the performance to help these students get the marks that they deserve to get them into the programs that they aspire for. On the flip side, for our volunteers, we're creating a lot of value as well. I mean, why have I and so many other people stuck around for years and years to do this? On top of the innate fulfillment we get, we also meet lots of like-minded, interesting, really motivated friends, and develop lots of great skills that can help us be employable. I'm writing cover letters for a lot of graduate applications right now, and I've actually had my dad read through one yesterday, and he said, I know you love RESN so much, but this is a job as a lawyer. I don't know why you're talking about how you're a tutor for half of your cover letter. we get a bunch of really passionate people who develop a lot of really great skills with what they do at RESN. And finally, we're working on building more relationships with universities as well, because the diverse cohorts that they can generate and the increased demand from domestic students that they could generate if they really got behind getting regional students into university would be a pretty big financial boost and a huge cultural boost, in my opinion, for the sorts of cohorts you're getting on campus at universities. And we also aim to communicate relevant, useful information to our students from these universities. So, for example, I met a student in Yass who was really interested in doing engineering, but didn't know if she'd have the money to move to the city. And I was able to tell her, look, there's actually this scholarship for regional women to study engineering at ANU that will pay for your full degree and a living stipend. And, so many students don't know about these opportunities until there's someone there to bridge the gap between the university and the student. And that's one of the roles we're trying to fill. As I said, we've got a really big focus on child safety with our working with children's checks, tutor training, content moderation, all of our policy documents. We're really blessed to work with a professional board of directors, professional in that they have professional experience. They're all volunteers, and they give up their time to really generously help us make sure that what we're doing to the best of our abilities. So, we focus a lot on making sure that parents, teachers, community leaders can trust that when their young people come onto the RESN portal, they're going to be treated there with respect and with dignity. We really try to focus on what we do on two axes. We do better than anyone else these two axes, the fact that we are completely free and we are completely personalized. As far as we've been able to tell, there isn't any other initiative out there that offers this same level of personalization at a completely zero cost. Usually you're trading it off. You pay for personalization or you don't pay and you get standardized material. RESN is the best of both worlds, and that's something that we're really proud of. We spend a lot of time on measuring our success as well. I mention this because it's something we're working really hard on building trust with schools on, is building relationships with schools that will allow us to work with them to see, is there an effect that we can notice of students working with RESN and their marks improving noticeably. So, any principals out there who'd be interested in talking to us about that, please let me know. And finally, and most importantly, RESN is really tangibly changing kids' lives. This is why we do it. You remember Nicola, who I mentioned at the start of this presentation, who wasn't sure that she was even going to get into uni. Nicola, with RESN's help through year 11 and 12, went from the bottom of her class all the way to the top, and from Port Macquarie to Sydney. She's now studying a Doctor of Medicine at UNSW, and she tutors with RESN in her free time because she believes so strongly in the value of what we've done. I say this a lot. I think a fair go is our national birthright as Australians, and RESN is doing what we can to make that a reality. So thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure to be here, and thank you for listening.
Henry, that's absolutely fantastic the way you've summarised the work of RESN there. I just wanted to quickly take you back to when you presented to our Rural Youth Ambassadors a couple of months ago, who, to be fair, knew nothing about RESN when they joined the conversation. Henry made it very clear that he wasn't there to sell, he was there to provide information and talk about the journey that he's just taken us on. And it was fair to say that all of our students pretty much got their phones out straight away and signed up and wanted to be part of the RESN experience, because everything that Henry spoke about today triggered for them their experiences that they currently have in their rural and regional and remote schools. lots and lots of positives, but lots of challenges as well, as Henry's outlined. So that was absolutely fantastic. So much so that those young people are now looking at how they can go back into their school community and promote what RESN does to the other students in their school that haven't had the opportunity to hear what Henry's presented with us today. So Henry, that's fantastic. The buzz is still there. Those young people are coming back together again soon, and they'll be taking RESN back into their communities. I just wanted to ask you a bit more about your work directly with schools. We've heard about the experience working with young people. What's sort of your message if you know, schools are listening here about how they can work with you directly and then get their students involved? What's the process, and what sort of advice would you give them?
We love working with schools because, frankly, we recognize what our role is and what our role isn't. We are not teachers. We're not there to replace teachers or to do the same job as the teacher. And so we absolutely love when we're able to interact with teachers and hear from them. Here's what my students need. Here's what's great about your services. Here's what you could improve with your services. And so to that end, we go into schools and we meet with teachers as much as we can. Anyone who would be interested in hearing more about RESN, the easiest thing to do is just email us at hello@resn.org.au. That's resn.org.au. And we'd be delighted to organize one of our presenters to come into your school and talk to your kids about RESN and what we do. Equally, we'd love to make time, you know, as it suits your schedule, to talk to you about what you think we're doing well and what you think we could be doing better. Because, bringing it back to the fact that we're not trained educators, and so we try to lean as much as we can on the expertise of the people who have spent their lives doing exactly what we're trying to support.
And I guess in an ideal world, the relationship and the partnership between school, student, RESN and the community is the best way, when everyone's working together for the common goal that you've outlined today.
Exactly. That it sounds an awful lot like a cluster. That's exactly what we're trying to do. You know, I'll give you an example. I went to a high school called Mount View High School up in Cessnock, and the vice principal there was telling me about how they've had to institute a 2 pages, 1 essay policy. That the English teacher was staying up till 3 a.m. marking essays every day, and so they've had to say, look, you can send in 1 draft essay of 2 pages, and that's it. We're there to give feedback on the 2nd essay, the 3rd essay, the 4th essay, for when the teachers have to go pick up their kids and do the dishes and get a bit of sleep. So yeah, we love to be a part of the community and to follow the lead of what the community needs.
Thanks, Henry. Mindful that I've asked a few questions. Has anybody got anything that they'd like to? We've just got a couple of minutes, I think. If anyone wanted to ask or share any thoughts from what they heard, I've certainly loved what Henry's presented. Have heard the students' feedback, and it's amazing. So, Brendan, I think you had your hand up. Did you want to make a comment?
Yes, thanks, Henry. Henry, just a practical question. I'm from the Wimmera part of Victoria. We have a lot of black spots in that area. Have you had any issues with digital connectivity? And if you have, how do you overcome that issue in terms of developing those relationships with the students?
Look, Brendan, that's a great question. The inescapable reality is that given our services are provided online, you need some sort of internet connection to access them. That said, the website and the web app were built in such a way that they're designed to minimize the amount of bandwidth you need to actually make them work. So they're not built on, for example, a Squarespace platform or something like that needs a lot of megabits going through to get you connected. It works on a pretty low connection, but yeah, as you say, unfortunately, in a complete black spot, it won't work. So that would be, unfortunately, someone who wouldn't be able to access our services at home.
Is there anything we can do CEP can advocate on your behalf to do something about those issues, Henry?
Look, I think that the fact that there are black spots in one of the world's richest and most technologically advanced countries is abhorrent. I think that it's beyond RESN's pay grade to advocate for that as well, unfortunately, but we wholeheartedly support the efforts of anyone who's saying the government needs to do something about this, because yeah, it's, as I say, it boggles the mind that still exists.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
And I think, Henry, like you're saying, that with the work from CEP as well, if we're aware of students who are even more disadvantaged from their rural and remote experience, we can certainly look at how they might be able to get into places where there is a better signal and stuff, and maybe that's something that we can do, because as you touched on, we certainly don't want our more marginalised and disadvantaged students to have even more disadvantage because of their lack of access to technology. So a very good point, and maybe that's something that we'll take on board and have a further discussion with, and we won't hold you to anything to have to do in that space.
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, look, I'm aware of time. It's a few minutes to go till 5 o'clock. And Henry, I just wanted to again thank you. Having heard you with our young people a few months ago with our ambassadors, and now your presentation today, absolutely awesome, the work that you and your team are doing. There is in the chat box there's the contacts if anyone would like to email and contact you. Mindful of the fact that for the next 5 weeks, you're going to be in your very own black spot overseas, and you won't be responding and deserving a well-earned break. So wanted to wish you all the very best for your time overseas, and we look forward to you getting back to the country safe and well and refreshed. So thanks, Henry.
Thank you, Maurice, and thank you everyone for having me. I always love engaging with CEP, and at least one of our RESN students has actually joined onto the CEP Ambassadors program. So, you know, what we do are two sides of the same coin. And I'm just so thankful for being here and everything you guys do.
Thank you. And likewise, we love our partnership with RESN, and we'll continue to see it grow and flourish. Just finally, before I throw back to you, Brendan, I think you've got a couple of things to wrap up with, but next week's session, for those who don't know, is particularly focused on principal accreditation. So it's a very specific area, but one which is very, very important. So if you're listening today and you're in that category, where you're looking at that process, which can be very exciting, but also very challenging, next week's session will be in that particular space. So thanks, everybody. I'll stop hosting now, and I'll throw back to Brendan to wrap up for today.
Thanks very much, Maurice. And I'd also like to thank Henry and Robert, Shane, for our speakers today. It's been a terrific session. I was just wondering, Mark, was there anything you wanted to add before we finish today? No?
Mark's driving, so
yeah,
we better not distract him.
All good. Maurice has already mentioned next week's session, VAPA, Principal Accreditation, for those that are interested in that session. It's the 4th in the winter series, the last one for this term, and then we'll have another series in 3rd term, the spring series, connected to the community. Thanks to everybody for your participation again today. I'll remind you that the poll is online there in the chat box. So please complete the poll before you sign off today. Thanks, everybody, and bye for now.